Okay, so we got a lot of material to cover in a very short period of time, about 20 minutes, because that's what everyone's attention span is. If a couple hours go by, it really is just basically 20 minutes. And this is really where the rubber hits the road, because what we're going to be talking about is bone density, joint health, which is, again, if we survive the cancer and the heart disease, that's the deal. That's the thing that's going to get us. I wanted to ask, as a dear friend of mine came up and said, who had developed a problem up here due to cell phone radiation, that we all actually become conscious about actually turning our cell phone off and keeping it away from us. I mentioned yesterday, you remember that? That the further that darn thing is away from you, the safer you are. But if you turn it off, it's off. Yeah. So it's not going to ring. There's no interruptions. There's nothing more important than what's going to happen here in the next hour.
Thank you.
You came, right? You came all this way. You invested all your time, all your energy, all your money to get all the way here for an hour of time that we're going to have right now. Vital, crucial information. There's nothing that's going to come up. You don't need a little thing to vibrate next to you or that kind of deal. And by the way, for me personally, I never keep a cell phone touching me ever, off or on or any way. I just want to put that out there. I'm not like a real sensitive like I do, if I walk into like a Walmart. I mean, it happens, right? I pull over at a Walmart in Tennessee. In the parking lot, somebody recognizes me. Of all places. I'm like, geez, man. Strangely enough, my aunt, I grew up in Missouri with my aunt a good part of my life. And on one corner, she owned the lot right there, and she built a grocery store. The other corner, catty corner from her, was Sam Walton's estate. So we used to go over there. So I met Sam Walton, his kids, all that stuff when I was a kid. Isn't that a trip? He was an amazing man, actually. Here's the issue. What we're really doing here is we're connecting up that level of genius with environmental accountability. That's what we're doing. Because when we put that together, then we can really have a world that works for all of us. And unfortunately, back then in 1950, 1960, there wasn't that environmental accountability. There wasn't that environmental consciousness. There is now. So what we're really requesting from everybody here, every business owner, every entrepreneur, is developing that environmental accountability in the same way and the same level of genius as Sam Walton developed it. And I want to say one other thing about that, and that is, out of all the companies that are out there, and I've had the opportunity to be behind the scenes in a number of different industries, Walmart is actually trying to correct some of the environmental troubles that they have created, which is good news. And there's a lot of good things happening. So, we can go bash them to pieces, but really there's actually very good things happening out there. But if we're with that cell phone, again, keep it far away from you when you're traveling. If you have to have it on, somebody's waiting to call you or you're waiting to receive a call. And the further it is from you, the EMF decreases by the square of the distance. People are going, what does that mean? The further that thing is away from you, the better it is. All right, you guys ready to get into this? Yeah. Okay, here we go. So I've got a bunch of images. We've got some video. So this is a picture and a little image of your vertebrae. Okay, so if you look at it closely, we've got two things going on here. We've got our bone, and then we've got the joint. Then we've got our bone, then we've got our joint, then we have the bone and the joint. Now, the joints are made up of substances that it's very controversial, actually, what the joints are made out of. And there's no general agreement about this. So therefore, there can be no real general agreement about as to what we should be eating or putting on topically in order to nourish our joints. And I'm just going to share with you what I've learned about this, because what I've learned is very interesting about the joints because of what I've seen. And so my opinion about what the joints are made up of is very different than the conventional discourse on such matters. Is it possible that the conventional discourse on this subject might be outdated? People argue with me. They're like, no, this, that. It's like, look, man, look at the results. That's it. Like, you want to just judge by results. That conventional theory did not get us what we wanted, which is the best joints ever. Yeah. We used that in a different context when I was in college. That day, that earthquake in San Francisco that day. I have a story about that day, but that's for a different thing. Okay, so Rudolf Steiner said it this way, and I love the way that Rudolf Steiner described this. He said that mammals, and basically animals in general, we mineralize the structure on the inside of us in exactly the opposite way that the earth does it. The earth forms a barrier on its outside, a shielding, a calcification. It has an exoskeleton like an insect or like a crustacean. That's how the earth is. I mean, if you analyze the earth's crust, it's 10% calcium. So it's actually putting up a shield or a barrier, and that's kind of what holds everything together, kind of like an insect. It keeps all the pieces together. Well, in us, we mineralize ourselves on the inside in order to have structure. Now, the excessive mineralization is what we call what? Arthritis, calcification, bursitis, bone spurs is another thing like this. And what's causing that? So I'm going to show you some images as we go through this that are going to give you some insight just by seeing it. Visualization is a huge piece of the puzzle. I briefly mentioned that last night, and we were talking about visualization, and we like Western diagnostic tools because it allows us to visualize what we're dealing with much more directly and have a much stronger ability to use our mind to heal ourselves. You know what I mean? If you know what the tumor looks like, the shape, the location, you're in a totally different boat than if you don't. If you know the name of what you're dealing with, you've got a whole different power than if you don't know the name. Okay? So I'm going to show you some images of tendinitis. I'm going to show you some images of what arthritis looks like that I think are going to improve your ability to kind of see it and then go, oh, wait, it might be something different. Now, the bone, of course, is made out of calcium phosphate primarily, but the joints, what's in that? So I'm going to give you a little bit of a list that we're going to start developing and evolving about what I've learned. The two major things I know that are involved in joint formation and healthy joints is two minerals are silica, and the second one is sulfur. Somewhere around here is this plant-derived sulfur, this MSM. Oh, there it is. This is a upgrade in the operating system. Pine resin MSM. It's made out of pine, right? That's a good product right there. If you've got joint problems, chronic inflammation, if you've got a situation where you're like feeling like, uh-oh, things aren't quite as juicy as they were, you're losing the buoyancy. What do I mean by that? That's a word that will come back over and over again. Buoyancy, it looks like this. Gravity looks like this. Another word that I will use, levity. So in the joints is levitational substances, substances that give the buoyancy. And the main one is hydrogen. So that's number 3, silica, sulfur, hydrogen. Now, what is hydrogen? We'll look at some images. Basically, it's water, and it's high grade water, the highest grade water. And we talked about water in the context of the DNA, if you recall. And I mentioned that the DNA is defined by 10 layers of water molecules that are around the DNA. Remember that? So that's the part that's unwritten. That's why we've got to have the best water we can get at all times. Now, fortunately, I was able to get the best water at all times in this last tour, and I'll tell you, that was such heaven. I'm going to show you some pictures of that. We'll see some images of some of the springs that we've gone to. Now, this is what joint problems look like. So if you have a look at these images, you can see what a normal disc is right there at the top. Then you can see degeneration. You can see bulging, what the herniated disc looks like, thinning discs, and then you can see what complete degeneration looks like to give you an idea of like, uh-oh, when it gets to bone on bone, that's real trouble. Can we avoid that? You bet. Is it possible that information has come to light that could allow us to live another 50 years longer than the conventional discourse says we can live? Of course, right? Now, I mentioned this before. I want to mention it again. And my friend Dave Kekich, last afternoon, we were doing a little talk and an interview together. And one of the things he's onto as well is this idea, if you can just hang on here until about 2029, that's 19 years. It's very likely that there will be breakthroughs that allow you to live 50 more years. I mean, look what's going to happen here this weekend. If you just literally nest in and apply everything possible that you learned here this weekend, right, over the next 6 months, you can change your whole trajectory of your whole life, your whole aging. Everything completely can go backwards, where you're getting younger and you're going, what is going on out there? Because everybody out there, when you look at the general population, you see, my God, this is with Twinkies. You know what I mean? It's like these people are making on Twinkies. There was an article. I should have put this image in there, but it was too brutal. It was an article that was in the paper the other day, and it was about a woman who had survived to 100, and her main diet was candy bars. But it was chocolate bars. But it wasn't the good stuff. And there she was, like, with all her 30 chocolate bars that she eats a week, and that's her main thing in her diet. Okay, so let's look here. This is another look at our bone. So from an x-ray, you see the space where the joints go. You get an idea of what healthy bone looks like, right? These are the areas in our body that we really are concerned about, our lower extremities. These are the areas in our knees. Of course, right below that are ankles, and then the big one, of course, is our hips. I kind of briefly said it yesterday, but I'm going to say it again. The hip breaks, then the person falls, is what we're finding out is going on. There's no need for it. We figured out we get the shoes off, then we're on it. So somebody's asking me about organosilica. I got to put this out here. This is an amazing thing that showed up in my life. I was at this place called the Treehouse in Detroit. Anybody been to Detroit? Anybody ever going back? Man, I was like in Detroit, and I'm like, okay, there's got to be something here balancing out this energy. So I end up in this health food store called the Treehouse. My friend Matt, who works there, turns me on to organo living silica. So the best forms of silica are what's natural. We're going to get into all the plants and natural sources. But this is a product that's a concentrate of spring water that has a very high amount of silica in it. I'm going to be revisiting and coming back to organo living silica. I like this product myself. And one of the things I like about doing what I do is I get to drink this stuff and no one can stop me. So, just how I do it, you take this thing off, and then you pour a little shot for yourself, like that. Now, this guy who is behind this product, the powers that be don't like him. Why? Because that is a technologically disruptive product. Why? Because it starts deleting needs for other, like, anti-inflammatories sold, COX-2 inhibitors, that kind of stuff. I'm not going to get too specific, but you fill in the blank. You know what I'm saying. Okay? And it works topically. Put it on there, and it works like DMSO right there topically. Boom, right in there. So I want to put that out there. So we've got sulfur, we've got silica, we've got hydrogen that's making up the joint. Now, there's also other things that we're going to look at that are in those joints that I believe are very critical to understand. In general, I'm going to be referencing, it's tough to see here, and I apologize for that. Well, I'm going to be referencing the Longevity Now program. How many people have seen the Longevity Now program, looked at it, listened to it, studied it? Okay, how many people won't raise their hand no matter what I say? It's always a few of you. And this is a 5-stage program to break down calcification in your body. The reason why somebody gets tinnitus and it becomes chronic and they can't get rid of it no matter what they do is because there's a calcification component. The reasons why somebody gets a liver condition, a hepatitis, and it gets stuck is because there's a calcification component, meaning that these organisms are forming shells. That's obvious, isn't it? You disturb the flow of an ocean, you're an ocean. We're a walking column of ocean water. We disturb the flow, what occurs? If you went out right now into Long Beach Harbor and you put pylons in and put in a dock, in 5 years, if you went and looked at those pylons, what's going to be around them? Barnacles. That's right, barnacles. So let's say you were disturbed yourself, you were in an accident, you had an injury. You develop scar tissue. There's something in there, there's like a bump. What's that? That's barnacles. Isn't that interesting? So yeah, it's coral, essentially. And that's the deal. Now, this is one of those things. It's like a pet peeve. I apologize for this. But Scientific American, the latest thing, it says, this stuff doesn't really exist, but it does exist. That's what they're saying. They know for sure that this calcification eats protein. That's for sure. It's been confirmed. But it's not living, so we can't actually say that it's really existing. So we have to get into what is our definition of what's living. Like for me, it's like the coral secretes the calcium, and that calcium, yeah, it's living, but if we search through that calcium, it's the shell, right? It's excretion. It's like your fingernail. Is your fingernail living once you clip it off? Some people say yes, some people say no, but scientists say no, right? So there's a controversy about this. So I want to just clear that controversy up. if something is eating protein and it's forming calcium in your body, it's very likely to be a coral-like organism. And we have to kind of drop this whole scientific prejudice that just because it secretes a calcium or a fingernail, that it's actually not living. Because the fingernail, once it's been clipped off, is not living, quote unquote. I'm putting that out there. And we'll look at some images that evolve that conversation a little bit further. In step 1 here, then we have bad calcium dissolvers. And this is a very important point about once we start getting calcified, we need to get some chemistries in us that help break down the bad calcium so we can get to the little jelly blobs underneath the barnacle, the oyster, the mollusk, the coral. Because it's not the shell that's living, right? It's that little thing in there. So we need to fry that stuff down. You ever seen that situation where somebody has like a bump on their foot? Right? Like right here? Yeah. Some people got that going on. It's like, that's me. What do you mean? That's a little hive. Right? There's all like little critters living in there. And what I found out through grounding, you start grounding yourself, you start seeing that this stuff starts going down. We had a guy, right here in the front row, naturopathic doctor, with a calcification on his hand right here. And he just grounded, you grounding it to your hand right now? Right? Look at that. And so what happened to your hand once you grounded yourself a couple days ago? Within 2 days, it decreased by how much?
It went from down like two-thirds, three-quarters to two-thirds. It's not hurting. I had a bump that was sticking out that far.
I'll repeat for everybody. So he had a bump that was sticking out. It's gone down 2/3 to 3/4, and the pain was gone, he told me last night, in 15 minutes. Why? Because you're restoring the flow of electricity, like you're pulling the pylon out saying, bye. You see? So suddenly they can't grip onto anything anymore because the electricity is flowing. We can take this metaphorically out pretty far. If we've closed our heart because we're angry at the world or something, then boom, we might be suspect for plaque in our coronary artery. If we've had trouble with our father, then it's going to be liver stuff, right? And calcification of the liver called... What's that? That's right. Sclerosis, cirrhosis. Sclerotic conditions is what those things are. And if we look at every condition, kidney stones, liver stones, cataracts, hard of hearing, what are we dealing with? Calcification. Cancer, tumors, it's hard. What's the hard? Yep. You see, you get the picture. Now, as a scientist, I got to look at that and go, there's something similar about these conditions. So therefore, we got to go there first and see if we can find everything that's similar and then find the Achilles heel. So that's what this is the Achilles heel. So we've got to get some of that bad calcium broken down. There's different things that do that. MSM does that. Organoliving silica does that. Megahydrate does that. I threw a megahydrate out there. You got that? Man, you are so lucky. That's my favorite thing. Yeah, I mean, that's one of those products that, like, if I run out of that, I'm like, oh, man, because that makes everything else work better. I was in Byron Bay, and there was a great dentist down there, and he brought me one of those. I was like, oh, man, you got this down here? Because you can't get this stuff across borders very easy. What else is in there? Shilajit, fulvic acid. This is stuff that fries down the bad calcium. If you Google fulvic acid, you can pull up a little report. It's called Fulvic Acid Report. I'd recommend that you read that report. If you Google around on fulvic acid, you will be, it took me years to actually find anything negative on fulvic acid. When I finally found something negative, it was a friend of mine sent it to me. She emailed me this thing, and guess what it said? If you like feed a rat an entire bottle of fulvic acid every day, like its own body weight in fulvic acid daily, then after like 2 years, we noticed that their nervous system was a little whacked out. It's like that. Fulvic acid, that's the over-the-top stuff. So that's one. Now, step 2 is we've got to get underneath and get the superpowered immunity to break down the jelly blobs, get our immune system actually functioning properly. And we've seen that. What products, what things can we take in that get our immunity functioning properly? Mushrooms, we know that now. We got the whole download on the mushroom kingdom. We get this information. There's stuff out of the animal kingdom that we need. There's stuff out of the mushroom kingdom. There's stuff out of the plant kingdom that we need. Mostly because of the structure of our digestive tract, who we are, it's mostly plant kingdom. That's just with the way we're constructed. But other things are important, and the mushroom kingdom is all about immunity. There are other botanicals like cat's claw, like mangosteen, and other things that get added in, even all citrus fruits, citric acid, that are amazing at frying down those little jelly blobs. Let's go to step 3. Step 3 of this is we got to get the real high-grade cell-rejuvenating supplements, probiotics in. Now, Donna Gates was talking about what again? Microflora and fermented foods. Because we are a guild of organisms. Paul said that last night when he came out. We're not just, I'm not David Wolf talking to you. My organisms have elected this voice to speak to you right now. And we have more DNA of organisms that aren't us in us than we are us. That's over the pale, isn't it? By weight, because our cells are bigger, it's mostly us by weight, but not by cell number, not by DNA material. Isn't that strange? So we're really farming friendly organisms. You're a farmer. Now, those friendly bacteria can come in many ways: fermented foods, probiotics, culturing different things. You can figure that out. Donna can teach you all about that kind of stuff. Another thing is high vitamin C botanicals. High vitamin C botanicals to restore connective tissue damage. If we've been injured and we have scar tissue, we're using bad calcium dissolvers, break that stuff out, we're killing off the jelly blobs. Well, now we've got to rejuvenate and heal the tissue. That's vitamin C. That's where vitamin C comes in. What kind of vitamin C do we want? Right, the best kind. Amla berry, camu camu. I was in Australia, in the WA they call it. Where's our Australian contingent in this room? Oh, right, yeah, in the WA. So what do they have over there? They have the Kakadu plum. This guy brought me the Kakadu plum, and he wanted a raw name. I said, dude, you're the Kakadu plum. That's one of the highest vitamin C plants in the world. They say it's even higher than camu camu berry. That was phenomenal. I actually brought all that all the way back with me. That was great. Sometimes they don't check your stuff. Okay, so anyway, then there's another piece of the puzzle here, and that is there's all kinds of things that are saying now that the C-reactive protein, marker of inflammation, is completely blown out by enzymes. If I'm, in a conference like this, and it's like I got to eat something for lunch, at least eat once a day, to maintain reasonable even blood sugar, I'm going, oh my God, I just ate, now I'm tired. I got to boom, get something going. So enzymes. Because I can't even have a dip like that. The energy can't even dip for a second. So if I eat something, have you ever noticed that when you eat something, like maybe 10 minutes later, half hour later, an hour later, after the fiesta, you have a digestion takes more energy than anything else. You want more energy, stop eating, and your energy goes like that. And you know what that means, because energy is liberated for other things. You fill in the blank. Part of this is fill in the blanks. Okay, so the next one, the fourth stage here is very important, which is the electricity of your body. We know the best way to electrify your body: jump in the ocean, be barefoot on the soil, touch the soil, gardening, actually getting as many hours as possible in direct connection with the earth. If we can't do that, then we have to make do with how our lifestyle is, which is this kind of technology. This opens up the meridians. What's K1 called? Uh-oh, let me see if I can do this here. Yeah. K1 right there. Okay, so that's bubbling spring. If we're gumming up bubbling spring by dumping cement on it, or even worse, asphalt, or even worse, plastic or rubber, then that is actually gumming up our entire meridian system. That's what has come to light. That the Chinese meridian system is actually, that's what Clint's research has shown, that's actually accurate. And that each meridian point or each acupuncture point is a well of electricity. And we got to fill that well up. Well, the most important well is actually K1. It's like a gate, right? We fill K1 up, then it moves up to K2, then K3, and just moves up your meridian system. And eventually, what's it affecting? What's kidney meridian about? Jing energy, adrenal energy, or kidney battery energy. So that, you see how important that is? And then we start opening up the meridian system so that we can actually become younger. It's like, okay, everything's flexible and loose. Zappers are really good. So like right now I'm not grounded because I'm right here, so I've got my little zapper on. These things are just, I love this stuff. Airports, what do? Right? They pull this thing out. They go, what is this? I say, this keeps me from getting seasick on the plane. That is the best answer. That's the best thing to tell people. Because nobody wants to be responsible for you throwing up on the person next to you in the plane. And that usually, I took 17 plane flights in the last 6 weeks. 17 different, boing, 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 that kind of thing. And they never took it out once. Never looked at it. I mean, look at this thing again, okay? Look at this. It's got a beeping light on it. Look at that. Does that look suspicious to you? Never looked at it. I have it in my backpack usually. Now, I don't have it on me because I don't want them to like find it on me and be like, what's this? You just put it in with your cell phone or whatever else you have, your electronics, and just put it right through there. Every now and then, it's like 1 in 100 for me. They'll pull it out and they say, yeah, it just keeps me from getting seasick. They can actually measure it if they want to because this does produce a Schumann resonance, 15 hertz, which does actually prevent you from being seasick. It's true, right? From being air sick, being up there because you're off the Earth's EMF field. So this mimics the Earth's EMF field as best as you can for a little simple device like this. So that is another side benefit of these things. So I'm not actually lying to them. I'm telling them the truth. I think Don Croft is here, isn't he? Do you guys get one? I haven't even had time to go over there and say hello. I do want to get his new one because he's got a new one with a new little doodad gadget. I'm into gadgets. I mean, here's what I've learned about gadgets. They work. That's what I've learned about it. Some work better than others. There's a certain few that have hung around for me for years. The grounding gadgets, the zapper gadgets. I have a little bit of radionics equipment. That's hung out for a number of years. What else do I got? The biomat. That's another one. That's hung out for a while. Okay, that's number 4. Now, number 5, real quickly, is we've got to get in there and scrub the scale off with some physical force. Do you remember this the other day? Let's see if we get the camera on this one. Remember this? You got to get in there and you got to scrub the scale. That's called deep tissue body work. I'm going to do it again. You ready? Someone's got to get in there and scrub the scale off of you. You know, I remember this good friend of mine. She's now left the planet. Had breast cancer, very bad, very serious, and huge, and just massive tumor. And I said, "Let me touch it." She said, "No, oh no!" I was like, "What do you mean, whoa?" She said, "Don't touch it. You can't touch it." I was like, well, "Okay, I'm not going to touch it." I said, "Do you touch it?" She said, "No." Okay, do you get this here? So what's going on is that you got to break it up. It's got to be broken up. And it's got to eventually be broken up into small pieces so your body can detoxify it and get a hold of it. That's the scale. If we have scar tissue, I remember I was getting work done by Honoru, the Maori healer. Yeah, they're here today. You guys got to get a session with these guys. So he gets in. I broke my leg right here when I was 14. And he starts getting into there. I'm like, "Dude, come on, go easy." He's like, "Nope." So he's like going with his elbow all the way in there, like that. And I was like, "Oh God, oh no." That was like the worst of the worst. Interestingly, yesterday, Atta did the same thing, got into that same spot, 2 days ago, and it was perfectly fine. I was like, well, that's a big difference, because what was going on there is that I've built up scar tissue. We're going to see an image here. I'll show you what that looks like, where we're going to start to look at look at this. Watch this. That's arthritis, folks. If we don't get in there and break that stuff up and then allow the fulvic acid, the MSM, the silica, the hydrogen to dissolve it, then we can't take it backwards. Right? We got to be able to take it backwards. Another thing about this is that this stuff tends to accumulate lower down. Why do you think that is? Gravity. That's right, gravity. Gravity. So you can just look. You can see, if you look at somebody's ankles, you can see how long they got by the inflammation. As everything is precipitating down. As soon as somebody starts getting inflamed ankles, then you start going, 15 years. You can start seeing it. So that's just something to be aware of. What do you do about that? Well, I wanted to say this last night. I didn't have time. There are 2 forms of mammals that never get arthritis. Bats and opossums. Why is that? Because they sleep upside down. I read Nietzsche when I was like in my late teens, early 20s. The great philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. It's amazing to me how few people actually read the classic literature. That is shocking to me, actually. We are literate people. We're one of the only literate cultures that have ever existed on this earth, and yet we're like, nope, I'd rather watch YouTube. It's okay. Anyway, so I'm reading Nietzsche, and years ago, it was 20 years ago, I came across this phrase. He says, whatever is being sold in newspapers, whatever is being marketed in newspapers, do the exact opposite, and there you will have the truth. They didn't have that, they didn't have CNN and this other stuff back then. They just had newspapers. And so I've been looking at that phrase for 20 years and comparing it against my experience. Seems to be exactly right on. When you lay down at night, right, what do you got? You got a pillow that's holding your head up. Now, just to get up, you need to adrenalize yourself. That's the deal. Do you know that? That's why we're so different from every other mammal. We have totally different adrenaline and noradrenaline just to be able to stand upright. So you automatically de-adrenalize yourself when you get horizontal or when you go upside down. You turn your adrenaline off just like that. If you have adrenaline exhaustion, no problem. Flip yourself upside down. Now, our way of sleeping even is totally adrenalizing ourselves because it's keeping our head up, which means that all night long, some adrenaline must be produced to pump the blood up to our head. The real story is you're supposed to put the pillow underneath your feet and your hips. So you're a little bit upside down. So that all night long, you're detoxifying yourself, and all those things that are heavy are coming back into circulation and not precipitating down so your body can detoxify them through your lymphatic system, through your bowels, through the colonics, etc. So for me personally, I told you the story when I went to the AC/DC concert. ATGC. See that? You'll be able to remember that forever. And I get back, it's like an hour left. I got to pack everything up. I got an hour. What do I do in that situation? Get upside down for as long as possible. Close my eyes. 80% of our brain activity is visual. Close your eyes, get upside down. You immediately start rejuvenating yourself just like that. Accelerate healing. And that way you can keep going and going and going without wiping yourself out. How do you do it? Any bed in any hotel has a pillow. You get your pillow under your hips. An inversion is where your hips are above your heart. That's an inversion, where your hips are above your heart. If you start looking at yoga, what's the king of all yoga poses? That's the queen. Shoulder stand's the queen, head stand's the king. Why is that? It's an inversion. When you start looking at yoga, you start realizing that these yogis were on to being upside down. The baby coming out, right? Where's the head? Unless it's breech, right? But generally, the baby is positioned upside down. Steiner said we're a plant turned upside down. If we want stuff for our brain, we've got to take things that come out of the soil, right? Roots and mushrooms, mycelium. Isn't that interesting? You start seeing it now, you start going, ooh. I've been looking at this actually, that things that are from underneath the ground or underneath the water, marine phytoplankton, krill, that kind of stuff, has the correct omega-3 fatty acids for your brain. The omega-3s like flax and hemp that are above the ground, it's not the correct omega-3. Your body has to convert it. And that, I think, has something to do with this idea of a plant being turned upside down. Just putting that out there. It's something I've been thinking about. Yeah, so the correct omega-3s must come from underneath the ground, or the water must be actually embedded in the earth in some way. Something to consider. So I played around with this. I made a little formula. Turmeric, you want to talk about an up-and-coming herb for the future, turmeric. So we grow turmeric at my house, so we grew turmeric. We harvested a bunch. I made a little extract of turmeric, noni root. Noni root. That has more curcuminoids in it and more pigments than even turmeric has. And then I put a little bit of kava and then wild passion root, like passion flower. There's an area of the jungle in Hawaii where I know there's wild passion fruit growing, so I went up over there and I went with cameras, cut a root open, pulled that thing out. It's like 20 feet. Then we brought it back, washed it all, stripped it all down, put that in the formula. So those 4, what is that for? It's a brain formula, and that's what I brought with me on my New Zealand, Australia, Indonesia tour, and Japan. Why? Because I can't be blanking out up here. Got to have the brain stuff going. All right, let's keep going. So we got all 5 parts of that. You guys got the general gist of what that means. This is another look at calcification. So these growths that you see here, if you look This stuff here, not the circular stuff. This is actually balls of plastic that are in the mix. This is a culture of what's called appetite. How many people here have a big appetite? That means a big bump of calcium. A-P-A-T-I-T-E, not A-P-P-E-T-I-T-E. So this appetite grows and grows and grows and crystallizes and crystallizes and crystallizes, and eventually it collapses on itself and it forms a film. That's how it builds up. And layer by layer by layer, we start getting calcified. Again, aging. What's the most obvious symptom of aging? Calcification. What's forming this calcification and what has always formed calcium in the earth and what forms calcium beds in the earth is microscopic diatoms or clams like this that formed a shell. They died. The shell dropped to the bottom of the ocean. More formed, dropped to the bottom of the ocean. Always, all over the entire planet, in every ocean, there's a rain of calcium dropping to the bed of every ocean on this earth. And eventually it forms a film of that calcium. A cataclysm occurs, throws half the ocean up. All of a sudden you have a mountain range with a layer of calcium in it. Spring water moves through that calcium. It puts calcium into the water then. Animals drink it and they start getting accumulation of this calcium. And eventually that's what calcifies you. You following that out? Well water. Let's make it simple. What notorious problem with well water is it's got scale in it, which is bad calcium. Where did it come from originally? It came from an ancient ocean that was formed by these organisms and formed a layer of calcium at some point in the history of the world. So if we're going to get the right stuff, the best kind of water is spring water with no calcium in it. How do you tell? You see, everybody always has available the best technology ever. You could be a caveman or cave woman, this case may be. Imagine your wife as a cave woman. Give it that one a good visualization. Stone Age technology, you could figure this out. People are like, do you need equipment? Do you need this? Yeah, you can use equipment, but you can figure it out. All you do is you pick up your water and you boil it. You boil it off. If there's a film left over, you don't want that because that's arthritis. Isn't that easy? It's always simple when you really get right down to it. Like grandma dies, you're like, oh my God, what happened to grandma? So, we open her up, like, let's see what's going on in there. And you find out it's all this white stuff's in there. And you go, wait a second, that's what happens when we boil our water. And then you make the connection. We got so smart, we missed that little simple connection. And that has been known, that there's a connection between well water and arthritis. We've known that for 150 years. It's probably been known for thousands of years. And that's why generally you really don't want well water unless you're lucky, because every now and then you get lucky and your well is bored through to an area where there's no calcium and it comes up, you boil it off, there's nothing there. And when you have that, you have gold in your house. You have gold. If you have water that doesn't leave any residue, you are so stoked. It's a joke. And this is how you prevent, this is how you prevent aging. I mean, it is the fountain of youth after all, which is a little bit different than the kitchen of youth. Okay, now these things, this calcification, it's like parasites. Did I say that word? What was the word again? It is admitted, this is Scientific American, same magazine that said nanobacteria is a problem, but it doesn't really exist. This just drives me nuts. It's like, you guys polluted the whole planet, you're out of court. Bye. Do you know what I mean? People, no, it's got to be this. It's like, dude, the whole planet's filled up with giant Texas-sized floating plastic flotillas. It's like you're out of court. You screwed up. Now you just got to bow out. Anyway, so I love that. So this is admitting that over 1 billion people on the planet, if you look at the numbers way over here on the left, right there in that row, it's saying that 1 billion people, well over 1 billion people on this earth have parasites. But this is so unbelievable. It actually says, well, first of all, it says, here's the cure, all the pharmaceuticals. Sorry. But it actually says in here, and this irked me a bit. It actually says that the parasites in America were brought by the Latino people from Central and South America. It actually said that. And that is that, you see that? That irked me. I was like, because you've heard me say that before if you've ever heard my talks. Like, we don't have parasites, like it's down there. And that's that prejudice, right? It was just, I mean, it's ugly. It is just ugly, right? And it then works its way into the science. So people read this stuff, they're innocent, and they go, oh, this is what science is saying. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that even the mainstream scientific literature is saying that 1 in every 7 humans on this planet, it's actually even more than that according to these numbers, like 1.5 out of every 7 humans on this planet is contaminated with major parasite problems. Okay, so when we get calcification and we start getting a buildup of scar tissue, it's not just sand in the gears, it's also a golem in the gears. Meaning there's little critters going, oh, we got a nice little coral reef going here. This is looking good. And then all the other critters like the eels and everything else go, oh, that's a nice little coral reef. Let's go hang out there. The viruses, the fungus, the mold, the yeast, all go, this is a nice little happy home. And that's why calcification is so dangerous. Okay, now this is what they look like. This is calcification type of organisms in our body. There's another look at them. You can see it's just like coral. It's just like clams. In our body, this is another picture of tendinitis. You can see the calcification in here. The little piece, this is tendinitis. See the calcification, buildup of calcium here? Is that natural? I mean, it's the way Mother Nature recycles us. We're just accelerating it with our well water. If somebody is like eating factory farmed animal products or quote unquote free range, the farm uses what kind of water? That's right, well water. Now you can see here in the meat, hold on. You can see here in the meat right there, you can see here in the meat right there that there's calcium in there. Now you know what that means. That in the meat is the calcification. You see that? So that's how we're exposing ourselves unknowingly, unwittingly, because those animals are eating what? Well water. They're drinking well water. And so this is how it sneaks into us. Okay, so let's go more towards a solution. Now, this is an exoskeleton of a lobster. You can see the beautiful coloring. I grew up in Southern California, so we had lots of different lobsters down there in Ensenada. We used to go down there and get lobster, but they didn't look like that. This is a wild lobster from Hawaii, and you can see the brilliant coloring. Inside that exoskeleton is a substance that is one of the most widely sold anti-inflammatories out there. It's one of the most widely sold things for joints out there. What is that substance? Glucosamine chondroitin. It's made out of crab shells. It comes out of the seafood industry. Did you guys know that? How many people here know about glucosamine chondroitin? How many people know it comes from crushed up shells of crabs? That's a bit of a differential. Now, what is in that stuff? What is in the shell? Now, interestingly, in the layering of calcium carbonate and chitin, and Paul was talking about chitin, that's what the mushroom is made out of. In the layering of that is some kind of an interesting sugar. Then there's a layer, then there's another sugar. In that sugar, or polysaccharide, is the stuff that we want to get into our joints. The hydrogen, the silica, the sulfur, and something else. Now, these are marginally effective ways to approach arthritis, bone problems, and joint problems, glucosamine chondroitin. It's marginally effective. But you've got to filter through so much stuff. Your body's like, look, we can't, this is like bad calcium, we got to get rid of that. This is chitin, which is basically almost indigestible, just passes right through you, so then your body can't deal with that. And so you get very little of those goodies. Now we're going to get into how to get those goodies, to get the buoyancy into the joints and make sure that you live a very long time without any possibility of breaking a bone or any possibility of losing your juiciness of your joints. Okay, let's keep going here. We remember these images that we were talking about yesterday. Remember the whole DNA thing, and then there's the water. So we're going to start there with water. There's Mount Roraima, the rarefied water that's always pouring off the top of this thing. Nobody knows where it's coming from. There's hydrogen bubbling out of a pan. I was at Dr. Patrick Flanagan's house, and we ran this experiment, and he showed me. He's like, look, this is what hydrogen looks like. It falls upwards. It falls upwards. Actually, it was shown, a guy won the Nobel Prize. He showed that hydrogen, when it's released, actually will accelerate and fall into the sun. That has to be the case, actually. Because if you look at nature, you go, wait a second, that plant is falling upwards. The tree itself is displacing the force of gravity. Obviously, so are we. As Steiner said it this way. Listen to this. Steiner said, when we age, we become seized by substances in our body become seized by the forces of gravity. Now, why did he say that? He could have said, when you age, you get calcified, or when you age, it sucks. But he didn't say that. He said substances in your body become seized by the forces of gravity. That means that substances in your body right now are not being seized by the forces of gravity. Do you see how biased our presupposition is that gravity is intrinsic to everything, and that whole Einstein idea that was sold to us by Carl Sagan in Cosmos in PBS in 1979, 1980, if you recall? How many people watched that? Well, I watched it. I bought right into it. And actually, there is a deliberate thing going on to actually make us buy into that stuff, because there can be no gravity without levity. Newton asked, why did the apple fall and hit me on the head? Gravity. Here's what he didn't ask. How did the apple get up there in the first place? The answer to that question is the answer to the solution of joint problems forever, because it's buoyancy, right? Somehow that thing's getting that apple up there. What's happening there? Hydrogen is a big part of that. Very important aspect of nutrition. When we cook food, boom, hydrogen is lost. Always, the fresher the food, the more hydrogen is present. All life requires hydrogen. Not all life requires oxygen. All life requires hydrogen. I just want to put that out there. This is the most fundamental thing for life on Earth and health in general. Okay, now, the best natural source of hydrogen that is generally available to us is places like this. This is in Iceland, near Snæfellsjökull. Sola, can you say that for us? Do we love her accent? Wait, say it again. So this is a place where 7 springs come out of the ground, and I measured it. It's 26 parts per million. The first one there is holy to the Icelandic people. Eli baptized his daughter, I believe, in that water, right? Isn't that what happened? And so this is us there. We're with our friends. Look at these people. These guys are fanatics about this stuff. And when it comes up like that, that's where you get your hydrogen. So just so you know what to look for. Superhero at the source.
Powers. Joe Looney Juice.
I got it.
I know what makes you mad.
Okay.
These eye flips are something else.
But it makes you realize that the rest of humanity is totally insane.
So I'm going to show you another one. We went up above that to give you an idea of how gorgeous this place is. We went up above that. Ellie took us up there. We went with Christbjorg and the whole crew. And then we went down and we looked down from a sacred hole in the rock above that spring at the whole situation. That'll be the next video that'll come up. Okay, watch this. So that's my friend Denise. This woman is in her mid-50s right here. She full flexibility, full yogi. She's got it going on. She called me. I was in Maui right there. She didn't even know I was there. She called me and I said, "Where's the spring?" She says, "EO Valley." I said, "Where in the EO Valley?"
Is everything okay there, Messiah?
Like, no.
I think you should put that camera away as you go down.
That's the Wheatgrass Messiah. Some of you know him. This is amazing. So you see the springs coming out there, right? So now we're up above it. And then watch this. Look at the ocean. No cattle, no pollution, no giardia, no nothing. That's where we want to be. Anyway, we can pause that. So anyway, Denise, she called me up. This is just, if you put this intention out there, here's the intention I put out there about a dozen years ago. This is the goal I wrote down. I drink the best water ever. I just wrote it down. You can write it down right now. I drink the best water ever. I put that out there. You wouldn't believe what that manifested in my life. You wouldn't believe it, actually. You get an idea looking at that, but that's every day, someplace like that in the world. And Denise calls me up, and we're all over Maui trying to find the springs. She calls me up. I said, okay, where's the spring? She says, Eo Valley. I said, where in Eo Valley? She says, well, it's like this, there, the other thing. I'm like, it's not really the exact coordinate. We'll see if we can find it. I hang up. This guy walks up. He says, you're David Wolf. I'm on your Longevity Now program. I'm drinking spring water. I said, where are you getting it? He said, Eo Valley. I said, where? He's like, table number 4. There's a little picnic thing right there. There's a pipe comes out. That's the one. It was like that. So I said, Marcus, Nick, we're going. Boom. We went right there, and that water was, that was amazing water over there at Eo Valley in Maui. We did our entire tour, every city, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Byron Bay, Byron Hinterlands, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, Samudra, then Indonesia, and then Japan, every spot, spring water. Do you remember what I told you about Indonesia? Were you listening to me? I was saying, when we got to Indonesia, this whole tour was so magical. When we got to Indonesia, the Swami came after our cacao party. We had a cacao rave. And the Swami showed up. I said, where were you? And I don't even know the guy. I just said, where were you? Because he just had this big smile on his face. He said, I was doing a kirtan and this kind of thing. And he just would look so happy. I said, dude, what do you think of Bali? And he said, miracles happening, miracles. Miracles happening. I was like, okay, that's been my experience, yes. And it was like that. It was just like one miracle after the next. So here's a miracle. Is there any way we can dial in and focus in on this? Because this is a little bit tough to see. If you look here, this is a miracle, because when you get this high hydrogen water that has other little good substances that get in your joints, you can see the buoyancy and the levity. Look at that. I opened up my refrigerator or my freezer one day, and there was a thing going, like that out of the ice tray. I was like, whoa, closed it, ran, got my camera, took a picture of it. That's the picture, right? There it is right there. Do you see this thing coming out of there? It was like, I'm not kidding, when I opened up the freezer, it was like that long. It instantly melted just from the opening. Right? Just the air rushing in instantly melted it down to about there. But if you look closely, you can see it right there. And what that is it's levity. What happens is as it starts freezing, the hydrogen wants to come off. It tries to levitate. That's exactly the same substance that's in your joints, exactly the same substance that's in sap of a tree. It's exactly the same substance that's in the juice of a plant, the chlorophyll.
But it's not the water.
Yeah, that's water, yeah. That's water. And actually what that is it's Vor-trapped water. It's water from a spring. This is the spring at my house. And what we've done is we've spun it. There's more spring water. I love it how they call it in Canada. They say eau de source, right? Quebecois. There's spring water down there. This is in Bali. That stuff with the algae growing in it right down there, that's the spring. They put whole temples around their springs over there. Whole temples. You can't even go in there. You have to take your clothes off, put a sarong on, and then get in the water and do prayers under the spring water pouring on your head. And then each one is a different prayer. Like, okay, that one's for the dead. This one's for your wife. This one's for this. That's for that. And I was like, what? This place was unbelievable. Okay, so that was unbelievable. We get to Linda Garland's place. She's the leading bamboo activist in the world for bamboo agriculture. She has all the exotic varieties, bamboo construction. Across the way from her place, she has a wonderful river running through her place. Across the way, there's a spring coming out. I'm like, hey, that's a spring, huh? And she's like, oh, yeah, it's great. The priests come down, they drink that water. So I'm like, I'm going over there. So we went over there, got that water. It's just available. This water, by the way, when we really get that substance trapped and concentrated, what ends up happening, and you remember the story I was telling yesterday, that when we get that real high energy substance that's in that water concentrated, it's actually able to burrow through glass. So I've seen that in a number of ways, and here's an incident where it occurred. You could see that bottle. We had it all shielded and everything. It still didn't stop it, and the whole thing disintegrated. The glass disintegrated. The aluminum foil disintegrated, and all the water was gone, and the cardboard wasn't wet. It imploded. And what was left over was quartz crystal at the bottom. This is high. What this was is a high. This is spring water, high voltage spring water with Ormus gold. So there's plenty of this infolded metallic substances in water. And here's where I've been going to, and this is what I've been pointing at, and this is what I'm going to say right now, is It's in your joints. You have gold in your joints. You can have gold in your joints, but not metallic gold. Ormus gold, an infolded form of gold. Now, if you get that stuff around an ozone machine, it's like come to papa, because that stuff's very female. It gets exposed to the ozone, and it will implode. It'll be a sexual reaction. Does that make sense? Positive, negative, charge, get together. Unio mystico, mystical union of the opposites. And in fact, when I took, let me see if I got this image. Yeah, when I took this sample of aluminum foil right here to a scientist friend of mine, I said, what can do this to aluminum foil? What he said was hydrogen. Hydrogen will do that. So when you have this very strongly negatively charged substance, we call it Ormus substances, and you have, which is your joints could be made out of, and you have ozone, which is the atmospheric highly charged substance. When they get together, you have production of hydrogen or water. And that's exactly what you want in your body every time you breathe in. If you are negatively charged and you have enough of these kinds of substances in you, good spring water, hydrogen, if you have Ormus substances, then every time you breathe, you're producing dew water in your body, like that. If we don't, then what ends up happening is we start getting dehydrated. We start forming lesions in our body because we're getting oxidized by the atmosphere. We don't have the ballast or the anchor to hang in there against the pressure of the atmosphere. And I mentioned before that the earth has an exoskeleton of calcium. So what will occur in that situation is we'll get oxidized and our body will start calcifying. Does that make sense to everybody? So when you're grounded, automatically, just like that, you are anchored against the oxidation. When you take a huge amount of hydrogen in your body, living food, fresh green juice, you are anchored against the oxidation. If we're on a cheeseburger, we're not. If we're in a Nike running shoe with a cheeseburger, we're not anchored against it. We just get oxygen. We're getting fried. Could be Reebok. So there are other substances out there. I want to point this one out. This is blue-green algae, right? This actually is the color of very highly ennobled water. When you get water coming out of a spring that looks like that, that's the stuff you want. In the ancient earth, everything was blue. It's now all green. It's chlorophyll. But in the ancient earth, it was phycocyanin. You guys know about this? Phycocyanin produces hyperproduction of stem cells. What does that do for you? Makes you younger. I feel the cane coming. This, I use that phrase quite a bit. And one day I'm in New York, and I was with my friend Daniel Pinchbeck. Anybody know Daniel Pinchbeck? He's a famous author. His mom was Jack Kerouac's girlfriend when On the Road came out. That tells you something, right? So I'm hanging out with him in New York, and he's like, let's go over to this place, and I'll show you this. And this is like 2 in the morning. We wind up into this building, and he's like, oh, this is where vaudeville used to happen. I think, he's gonna talk. It's the cane, because I always bring up this thing about the cane, that pulls you off the stage. And he goes, next thing out of his mouth, he goes, yeah, this is where the first cane was used to pull somebody off a stage. I was like, oh man. You got to be careful what you talk about. So this is that high-grade water, which in its natural will take on this shape of DNA, because in its natural inwinding, it can hold more information in that shape, right? And that's the water that we want. That's the essence in the water that we're after, that high informational, dense, Ormus-rich, hydrogen-rich substance. Okay, let's keep going. This is horsetail. Now we flip to, okay, where do we get silica from the herbal world, and what's our herbal history about this? Horsetail is where we get our silica from the herbal world. This is like a miniature bamboo. So let's say you're in the tropics, it's bamboo shoots. Let's say you're in every other ecosystem in the world, it's horsetail. And that's how you get not only that substance and silica for your joints, but it also rebuilds bone. If we're grounded, we're taking in substances like bamboo or horsetail, and we are having other factors involved. Let's say we need hormones. Let's say we're at that point. Let's say we're 55. We're starting to get, the heat going, and we need the hormones. That's when the maca comes in, the deer antler comes in, those things that are providing the hormones. All of a sudden, we got a 1, 2, 3. We're grounded on the earth, so we're automatically mineralizing. Do you remember that little thing I was talking about last night? When you're grounded, you automatically remineralize. When you're up in outer space, you demineralize. Do you recall that story? The astronauts, we found that out. So we remineralize, we're getting the right minerals in, then we're getting the hormones. We get a little weight-bearing exercise. Let's say, we're out in the beach and we're doing a little bit of yoga, and then we get the sunlight and the vitamin D. Then we got all 5 components of mineralization and bone building. Let me just cut to the chase here. There's another thing you can do here. You can take all of that I was just saying, and you can make a chocolate drink out of it. You see it's gone totally absurd. You're there, you're at your Vitamix, you're grounded, right? You're doing your whole thing. You make like a little horsetail tea, hot chocolate thing. You run out the door, you're at the beach, sunlight. This goes far. Okay, I just want to get a few more images in here. Levity and levitational substances. We know that bees violate the laws of physics, or are the laws of physics just incorrect? Real good honey. This is Noni Land honey. This is actually in my room. It should be black. That indicates it has high amount of minerals in it. And which kind of minerals? Right? The sulfur, the ormus, the hydrogen, the substances we want. I've noted, because I was able to get the caboose off, which is the that I can drink honey now and I don't have like a reaction because the caboose was like, we left you behind, sorry, bye. So I can do the honey drinking trick. You guys know about the honey drinking trick? Where's the honey at?
Dave's going to demonstrate that a little later. We'll get a honey for him.
Anyway, couple more things. That's our little bee operation. One more thing I wanted to say here. 2 more foods I want to throw into the mix. Noni. That's noni. That's noni. Noni fruit, noni powder. Very high in silica, ormus, and sulfur for your joints and bone density. And then another one, of course, is ferns are as well, but another one is aloe vera. Aloe vera. Can you put that into one drink in the morning? Yes. Can you get that in one drink over there? Yes. Like we'll take that, this, that, the other thing, and you can actually live on that. And some of the most beautiful women I know that are now in their 70s been living on aloe vera. We were totally grossed out as kids by this. We used to open up the fridge and be like, ooh, God. But now it all makes sense.